I don't wanna be the boy that runs in the back. I don't wanna be the kid that falls in the dark. All I really want to be is a guy that gets that girl.
Welcome to the AJ Steele Show. We discuss politics, sex, money, and everything in between. And now, here's your host, an immigrant, a self-made millionaire, an American, AJ Steele.
Everything I say and do, I'm just not good enough for you. So how did I, your charming, lovely, intelligent, good-looking, and most certainly humble host... Okay, I know there's no more plaudits or expletives left to describe me, right? So how did I go from being called a nigger to being called a white supremacist in a span of 2 hours? Welcome to the AJ Steele Show. I want to open this program today with a question. Conservatives have the presidency, we have the Senate, and we have the Supreme Court. The only thing we don't have right now is the House of Representatives. And look what's happening to us. Do any of you conservatives out there feel safe? Do you feel safe wearing a Donald Trump hat? Do you feel safe having an American flag on your car? Do you feel safe about talking and telling people what you believe in? Do you feel like we have freedom of speech? Do you feel you have a right to practice your religion without government interference? Do you feel safe posting online or telling other people about your political views? Or do you fear that you will lose your job and your livelihood, your reputation? Maybe you fear something that's even much worse than that. Now do this for me. Imagine that President Donald Trump loses the election and we lose the Senate and the victorious Democrats get to stack the Supreme Court with their own nominees. You don't even feel that safe now. How safe will you feel then? The other week, my brother and I and my son, we all went fishing. It was a beautiful day in Northern California. And what's better than sitting around a fishing dock for hours, eating homemade sandwiches and catching practically nothing? Yeah, we didn't catch many fish, unless if you want to consider the 40-pound stingray we hauled in and released. But, oh well, I guess fishing is not my top skill. But the fresh air and the beautiful views of the Bay Area here in California, plus hanging out with two of my favorite people made up for it. Now, those of you who listen to our show, and by the way, our show just hit top 40 in England. I can't believe it. What a surprise. People listen to us all over the world, and being top 40 across the pond is not just a great surprise, but a true honor. And I really appreciate it. I mean, we have listeners in Germany, in France, in Italy, in Australia, in Africa, in Asia. We have listeners all over the place. And plus, of course, we have our American listeners where we hit top 40 on a regular basis. And that's pretty amazing considering we're competing with people like Michael Savage and Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and even Dr. Phil. But anyway, let's get back to our show. Those of you who listen to my show know that I'm not going to be talking about fishing all day, right? So driving my brother home that same fishing day when we only caught that one stingray, I noticed some people waving American flags and Trump flags on a freeway overpass. Now this is a shocking sight in the Bay Area. I live in the most liberal part of America, and waving an American flag, and even worse, a Trump flag, is tantamount to waving a Nazi swastika flag in this area. Look, I was tired. I was smelly from all the bait, the anchovies, the grass shrimp, calamari. Man, that stuff stinks up really fast. And I think I had a little heat stroke from fishing because it was 90 degrees that day. But I decided to rush home, jump in the shower, get dressed, and go join those brave American patriots on the overpass. And even worse, I decided to force my 14-year-old son to come with me because I really wanted him to know what it's like to be in a rally and to learn about freedom of speech and about standing up for America. So we got there within 20 minutes or so. I parked the car and we started walking towards the rally. I brought with me the big American flag that I hang in front of my house every 4th of July. And I was proudly wearing my Make America Great hat. It's a red hat with white lettering. And I bought it in 2015. Oh well, I'm not really that stylish anymore, but I think the hat fit the moment. And from the distance, I saw there were about 50 to 70 people there in the rally. Many of them were women from the ages of 30 to 80, I assume. The kind of women that you see wearing red, white, and blue hats. They're very flashy. They have lots of flag pins, and they have sparkly clothes, and they hold little American flags. And I also noticed a few men in the group, probably from the ages of 50 to late 80s. Kind of an older group. Lots of goatees, some tattoos, some had hats that show that they served in Vietnam or Korea. And rounding out the group, I saw a few couples, probably in their 30s and 40s, and I saw two young guys who I would guess were about 18 to 21 years old. Basically, from a county that has about 250,000 people, it's very affluent. About 80% of the people here are white and liberal. Out of this entire county, these were the only people gutsy enough or crazy enough to stand up for our country. And naturally, I felt in good company. I was one of the youngest guys there, so I felt really good about that. And just to be honest, I'm not 20, I'm not 30, I'm not even 40. But for some reason, I have this inflated ego, and I always think I'm the youngest guy in the group, which I absolutely wasn't. And sometimes it takes Mrs. Steele to remind me, you're not that young, and you're not that good looking. So there you go. Anyway, getting back to the story, I felt so strong and proud and patriotic, and I couldn't wait to join those people out there. But unfortunately for my son and I, that was the moment when the fun completely ended. As the two of us were crossing the street to join the group, we heard a few young guys. They looked white or Hispanic or both. I couldn't really tell. And they couldn't have been any more than 21 or 22 years old. They were just flipping us off and screaming at us, and it was hard for me to hear what they were saying. And then they walked towards us and started yelling at me. Fuck you, nigger. Fuck you, you racist nigger. Fuck Trump, you nigger. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Fuck you, nigger. First of all, I don't happen to be black. Not that it matters in the context of this story, but I want you to be aware that these folks were calling me nigger. These same folks who are supposedly fighting for Black Lives Matter. Now, I also want you to know that I don't usually use this kind of language that I've used today. But I thought you should understand what we're up against. What kind of scummy people are against us. The level of vitriol and stupidity and the pure hatred in these people's eyes was unbelievable. And this was just a taste of things to come. Not just for the rally, but for America. This was just the beginning. Now, mind you, I live in several homes, and one of them happens to be in Marin County. It's one of the richest, most white, most liberal counties in America. We don't have too much crime or violence here, and we have very little Antifa or BLM types. But surprise, surprise, even the suburbs are not safe anymore, especially not if you're a conservative or white. Now, after seeing these two idiots, I realized this is just the beginning. I told my son to stay close to me and to keep an eye on everyone. And then all of these animals started calling each other on Facebook and TikTok and getting more and more of them out there. And these thugs started swarming us and threatening us, especially the older men and the older women that were in the group. And all of this was happening while there's about 15 police officers who were there. And these cops, whose salaries we pay with our taxes, and not to mention, most of us conservatives support them with all of our hearts. These cops just stood there and did nothing. Absolutely nothing to stop the threats, the cussing, and the actual invasion of personal space and constant, unwarranted, unasked for touching. And the cops kept apologizing to us, telling us there's nothing they can do. Well, if there's nothing they can do, who needs them? Maybe they should be defunded. Maybe good Americans need to start protecting themselves by any means necessary, especially if law enforcement officers refuse to do their jobs. So for all of you good people living in safe suburbs, or what you think are safe suburbs, all of you middle ground, middle class, undecided, law-abiding voters, you know who you are. You're sitting on the fence about this Black Lives Matter crap and Antifa. And you don't know if you'll vote for President Trump because he's too rude and he tweets too much and he's too crude. I'm telling you, beware. You're not safe. Your political correctness and your liberalism is not going to save you when the hordes of thugs come to get you and your family. The street thugs are just a Facebook or a TikTok post away. And the police that you pay your hard-earned taxes for, they won't save you. As a matter of fact, they won't even help you. They're too frozen by fear and political correctness, and they're too scared to look like they're racist to do anything to protect law-abiding Americans. And where does this leave you? It basically leaves you all alone. Now, believe me, you want to stick around and listen to the rest of our show, because what I told you was just the tip of the iceberg of what happened to us for daring to wave American flags in the middle of suburbia. As this thing went on and got bigger, there were swarms of young blacks, Hispanics, and even white suburban kids who showed up to attack us and call us every name in a book, screaming at us, calling us racists, yelling out for socialism, threatening our lives and even our jobs. The story gets more and more interesting as it goes along, and it will shock many of our listeners. And speak of listeners, I wanted to say a special thank you to all of you in America and all over the world. We've been getting so many nice emails and comments, and our show just keeps growing and growing. And I really hope you keep spreading the word about the AJ Steele Show and get more people to subscribe and to listen to our show for free. The way things are going, the forces of evil may be shutting down all Patriot commentators in the near future. But I promise not to go down without a fight, because I know our country and our very future depends on it. Okay, it's time for me to take my first break. When we get back, you will hear all about what happened to yours truly at this so-called peaceful pro-America rally. This is the AJ Steele Show.
All I really want to be is the guy that gets the
The AJ Steele Show. Think of your loudmouth best friend, hated by all the wives, because he tells it just like it is.
finally see your love belongs to me.
Welcome back to the AJ Steele Show. As we were discussing earlier in the last segment, I was driving down the freeway with my brother and my son, coming back from fishing, and we saw this bunch of people holding MAGA flags and American flags. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool because you don't see that a lot in the San Francisco Bay Area. People here are usually too scared to even say that they are conservatives or that they dare vote for President Trump. So I decided to join them. I ran home. I drove home. I didn't run. I don't run much these days. I drove home and I got showered up and I brought my son with me, and he didn't really want to go. And later on, I felt really bad that I took him with me because there were a lot of consequences to what we did. But it is what it is, and I took him with me. I wanted him to feel what it's like to be in a political rally. And as we arrived, we parked the car, and as we're walking towards there, a couple of guys, they were either Caucasian or white. I couldn't really tell from the distance, and they started calling me names. They started calling me a nigger. They started yelling Black Lives Matter. This was my son's introduction to political discourse in liberal California. Just absolute rudeness. So I pulled my son close to me. I walked away from those guys. I wasn't going to get in any kind of fight yet. And I just kept walking towards the rally. I wasn't looking for any kind of trouble. I had my son with me. He's only 14. I didn't want him to get in any kind of trouble. And we kept just walking towards the rally. And once we got there, I met a lot of really nice people. There were kind of people from different age spectrums. Most of them were over 50 years old. There were some women who I thought were probably 70 or 80. There were some men there who I thought were about 70 or 80. And there were some men in their 50s. And I saw a few couples in their 40s probably. And there's two younger guys there, probably in their 20s. Really nice people, very friendly, just waving the flag, wearing their masks. I didn't have a mask because there's no need to wear a mask outside. But anyway, they were wearing their masks and they were waving their flags at people that were driving on the freeway beneath us, and they're also waving the flag at people that were driving on our overpass next to us. And it was kind of interesting. Some people flipped us off. Some people were screaming crap at us. And yet a lot of people were actually giving us the thumbs up and were honking at us in a nice way. It was kind of surprising. It was kind of surprising that here in the Bay Area, there's people that support President Trump and love America. It's kind of a sad thing to say that I was surprised at that, but you don't understand where I live. I live in the belly of the liberal beast, right in the San Francisco Bay Area. And people here are insanely liberal. And not only that, they're insanely anti-President Trump. I would say violently insane, but we're going to get to that in a few minutes because this is just the beginning of the rally. And I did notice one thing. There were about 10 police officers around there, I guess, protecting us. There was nobody to really protect us from because, except for those two thugs that were yelling at me, there was nobody really there. And we ended up talking to the police officers, and they were very nice guys. They all thanked us for what we do, and they told us that they're so happy that we support the police because they're basically being crapped on daily by everyone in California. So far, so good. There was some guy out there, I guess from the local press, that was taking photos, and he walked up to me and he asked me if he could take photos of me because I had the biggest flag and I looked really good with it. And I said, sure, I'm a pretty vain guy. Plus, I was the only guy in the whole group that had a little color. So naturally, I kind of stand out in a group like this. And I gave him my name, and he asked me what were those two other guys yelling at me. And I told him what they told me. And he appeared to be shocked. I assumed he's a liberal because he works for the local newspaper, which is an absolute liberal newspaper. But he seemed to be very nice and very decent. And he seemed to show some concern for the fact that these people were calling me the N-word. And so once the photos were done, we kept waving and we kept doing this and that. And it was kind of fun. People were in a good mood. It was almost 4th of July. They were very patriotic and they felt good about what they're doing. We've all been trapped at home for months and months in California. And it's actually nice to get out in the sun. And it's nice to speak your mind. It's just one of the beauties of being an American. And everything went along just fine until people started driving by us in little cars and screaming at us. Now, these weren't just regular people that just happened to drive by on the overpass. Somebody notified these people that we were there. And most of them seemed to be pretty young. I would say anywhere from 18 to probably 30. And there were just groups, like 4 or 5 people per car, just screaming obscenities at us, flipping us off. And they're just driving back and forth, just cussing us out in the worst, most vile language you can imagine. I didn't really think much of it. I waved at them. I gave them a thumbs up. I smiled at them. I'm a big boy. I'm used to dealing with idiots. But I looked at my son and I saw that he was sitting there in a corner with his hat pulled down, trying not to be noticed too much. And that made me really sad because these people were so nasty and so humiliating to his dad and to all the rest of the people out there. Their level of disrespect for these grown men and women, and some of them elderly, was just unbelievable. But this was just the beginning. More and more cars kept driving by, honking at us, flipping us off. And as more and more cars came, I realized this is not just some random people coming by to protest against us. This is a total organized event, and they are trying to intimidate us. And all of a sudden, as if on cue, a couple of cars just stopped in front of us, and a bunch of thugs jumped out of there. One car had a bunch of Hispanic guys in it. They were probably about 20 to 25 years old. And the other car had a bunch of black girls in them. And the minute they jumped out of the cars, they had these super loud bullhorns with them. And they immediately found the most vulnerable, the people that looked like they're the oldest people there, and got in their faces and started screaming at them, calling them Nazis, calling them pedophiles, calling them murderers, calling them white trash, calling them white supremacists. And when I'm talking about bullhorns, I'm not talking about yelling from across the street. I'm not even talking about yelling from about 2 or 3 feet away. They were inches from these people's faces, invading their personal space, yelling at them in the most aggressive, abusive way I've ever seen in my life. Just totally intimidating everyone that was there. And all of a sudden the police moved in and I thought, oh good, they're going to kick these bastards out. But boy, was I wrong. These tough police officers with their guns and their sticks and their special uniforms and their boots, they found the organizer of the rally. It was a lady that set this whole thing up. I didn't know who she was because I just randomly joined this rally. But I'll tell you what, she seemed like a very nice, very gutsy lady to me because it takes a lot of guts and actual ballsiness to pull something like this off in California. And then the cops told her, listen, it's all over Facebook that Antifa and Black Lives Matter are going to show up at this protest. And we can't protect you anymore. So please leave for your own safety. So we were there waving flags harmlessly, not hurting anybody, waving at people, waving at cars. We were peaceful. We were within the law. And we were asked to leave because the police couldn't protect us. Now, by then, there were about 15 or 20 cops there, and there's probably 10 to 15 of the thugs bugging us. Why couldn't the cops kick him out? Why did we have to leave? We are the people who pay taxes. We are the people who work. We pay property taxes. We pay assessments. We pay for those police officers to protect us from the criminals. And yet they're telling us that we have to leave? I mean, is this America? Is this what it's come to? The law just can't protect us anymore? We live in a very nice, very quiet suburban area. Why is it that the one time when criminals are threatening us, the police has to back away? And so this lady who organized the whole event started walking around to all the participants and asking them to leave because she said, well, we can't be protected and it's getting dangerous. And then she came to me and she said, oh, you have to leave. And I said, no, I'm not leaving. I have a right to be here, and the police better protect me. And if they don't protect me, I'll protect myself. Now, I don't pretend to be a tough guy. I don't like to fight. I don't like to get into battles, but I don't back away from a fight. If someone messes with me, and I don't care if it's in my face, behind my back, or a few states away, they're going to get back what they threw at me, and much more. I wasn't raised with peace and love. I wasn't raised with turning the other cheek. Now, I'm not knocking it. It's a beautiful concept. But sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And I don't usually back down when someone starts crap with me, especially when I had nothing to do with that other person, especially when I'm out there holding an American flag in a rally for President Trump. There were old people there. There were some young people there. There were people holding peace signs, for heaven's sake. Why the heck should we have to turn tail, and go away when we did nothing wrong? I don't think there's anything wrong with an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth in some cases. And if you don't like that, don't start crap with me. Stay away from me. Don't bother me. If you don't like what I'm saying, you have every right to protest against it. You have every right to discuss it with me rationally. You even have a right to argue with me. But I have every right to my opinion, and you will not infringe on my rights as an American and as a human being to speak my mind. And if you don't like that, tough. Stay out of my way. I don't mess with anybody. I don't start any kind of wars with anybody. I don't do battle. I have strong opinions, and I have a perfect right to them. And if you're going to infringe on my rights to express my opinions, to vote the way I want to vote, to believe in what I want to believe, then you're going to have a big problem on your hands. That's it. Okay? Now, there's so much more that happened. Naturally, more psychos from Antifa and Black Lives Matter showed up, and a bunch of rich white girls in an $80,000 Cadillac SUV showed up. You know the type, the totally brainwashed white girls who hate white people, supposedly. You know those type of girls, the ones that blast rap music out of their car, and they hate their own white parents and grandparents, the same people that work their butts off to give them everything. And after that, some black girls started filming me, telling me that they're going to make me go viral. They're telling me that I'm going to lose my job. You know, I'm retired, so it doesn't matter. Calling me names. There was even a rich white guy who drove by in a custom $150,000 plus Mercedes SUV wearing a very expensive suit. He looked like a total businessman and a total douche. And he was yelling at us about how socialism is great and about Bernie Sanders. Can you believe that? A rich white guy in a nice suit in a super expensive custom Mercedes SUV. The type of SUV that you think of when you see Jane Goodall, you know, in the wild, in those old Africa movies. But this one he looked like one of those SUVs, but he was perfectly clean, perfectly shiny. And you know the type of guy that drives those kind of SUVs, these virtue signaling tough guys. Fake socialist tough guys ready for a safari, just a regular Crocodile Dundee in the middle of suburbia. Now, naturally, the story doesn't end here. There were some altercations. The police officers had to separate me from a young Hispanic man who was threatening my life. There was a lot more going on, and I can't wait to tell you all about it as soon as we get back from our break. This is the AJ Steele Show.
You're listening to the AJ Steele Show, where no topic is off limits, no discussion too harsh, no truth more true. The AJ Steele Show. We tell it like it is.
All I really want to be is a guy that gets the girl. All I really want to be.
Welcome back to the AJ Steele Show. I'm so happy you're here listening to us still, and I'm talking about this big rally that we had. Actually, it wasn't that big. It was about 50 to 100 people in the middle of suburbia. People were waving flags. Some of them had peace signs. Some had Donald Trump flags, and naturally lots of American flags. And we got attacked. We got attacked by local young idiots, young adults who probably never finished high school. They hang out in the town center. They sit around smoking weed all day, playing video games. And since they have nothing better to do, they think that they're Black Lives Matter advocates all of a sudden. Now, we also got attacked by people who pretend to be Antifa. And yes, there were some real Antifa out there very quietly taking videos of everything, taking pictures, trying to dox people. So really disgusting people, the kind of people that, dang, I wouldn't let them in my house, that's for sure, and you wouldn't let them in your house either, but this is the reality in suburbia, especially out here in California. Now, yes, I'm mentioning the local thugs and the local yokels who pretend to be BLM and Antifa, but like I was saying a second ago, there were some real Antifa people there who were kind of running the whole show, sending emails, sending out stuff in Facebook and TikTok, letting people know that there's some horrible terrorist white people out there holding the American flag and waving it. And some Black Lives Matter people started showing up. And these weren't local people, I could tell. Now, let's take this a few steps back. So I'll just keep telling you the story, and I hope you enjoy it. It was not fun, but it was definitely interesting and most definitely eye-opening. So the next thing that comes up is a car opens up, a bunch of black kids run out of it, mostly women actually, not men. Ages, again, 20 to 25, and they start yelling at people with their bullhorns, and they started picking on the oldest people in the crowd. They didn't come up to me. They didn't come up to the men. They found some old lady that was barely walking, okay? You could tell she was like borderline, could have used a walker or a cane, and started yelling in her face. Now, they weren't just yelling, they were crowding her physically. They just joined in on her, and I could see that she was getting very, very scared and started backing up towards the railing on the freeway ramp. And I got very afraid that she might fall or hurt herself. Now, these nasty black girls weren't just yelling at her and trying to argue with her. They were attacking her, calling her every name in the book. Words that I don't even want to repeat for you. But these were very, very evil words, peppered with "you're a racist, you should die, we're going to kill you, we're going to find out where you live." Now again, this woman was probably 70 or 80. She was just out there waving a flag. She wasn't causing any trouble. She wasn't calling anybody names. She's not a racist. She's someone's grandma, for heaven's sake. And that's how they treated her. And my blood started boiling. And I jumped in between them. And the poor lady, she hid behind me because she was so scared and so intimidated. I just couldn't take how abusive and vicious they were to this old lady. I'm not some big tough guy, but I'm not going to take anybody yelling at an older lady like that, being so rude to her, an older lady that could have been their grandma. And I stepped in there and I said, you know what? Leave her alone. Why don't you pick on someone your own size? And these two black girls, with the foulest mouth I've ever heard in my life, calling me every name in the book, turned their cameras on me and started yelling at me. "Oh, we're going to dox you. We're going to have you lose your job. You're going to go viral. You white mother effer. 30 minutes ago, I was being called a nigger, and now I'm being called a white mother effer." Amazing how that works, right? Now, I'm a big boy. I can handle my own. I can handle myself. I'm not too worried about 2 or 3 black girls with a big mouth and a big attitude. And of course, they all turned their little phones on me and they started yelling at me, "Oh, you're going to go viral. We're going to find out where you live. You're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your job." And naturally for them, they kept calling me the N-word, calling me a racist, calling me a white supremacist. Now, most of you listeners who have had a chance to look at my photo realize that I'm not exactly white. I'm kind of brown-skinned, but that's besides the point. To them, it doesn't matter. If you support Trump, if you're a patriot, if you love America, then you're a white supremacist. So I tried to diffuse the situation because there's no point of me, a grown man, arguing with 2 young women. Girls, they're not even girls. I don't know what they are. Little animals is what they were. Probably around, again, 20 to 25. So I asked them, "Where do you guys live?" And they said, "Oh, we live around here." And I said, "Well, do you have a job?" "Well, we don't have a job, but believe it or not, we own our own house." Now, I live in a very expensive area. To own a house here, you have to be either semi-wealthy or inherited the house, or the government helped you to get it. And I said, "Oh, so you own your own house in this beautiful, rich county?" "Oh, yes, we do. So we're not some bums. And we go to college." And then they started going on a rant on how horrible white people are, how black people have no chance in America. And I told them, hey, wait. Let's back up. You live in one of the richest counties in the world. You go to college. You don't work. And your parents own their own house. Must be really hard to be a black person in America, isn't it? And then they just started yelling and walked off. They couldn't take it. But that's the fact. These are spoiled black kids who probably got everything handed to them for free. They have a beautiful house in a beautiful county. They go to college for free. They don't have a job like my kids. My kids go to college, but guess what? They also work to pay for college. So these kids, these nasty black girls, have the right to call everyone a racist, to complain and bitch about how horrible it is to be a black person, and they do nothing. They get everything handed out to them. That's the hypocrisy. That's the hypocrisy of Black Lives Matter. That's the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party and their voter base. And that's the pure hypocrisy of people that say that whites have privilege. That whole narrative of white privilege is such a load of bullcrap. These people are so delusional and they're so full of hatred and laziness, and they just want to take and they just want to hurt, but they don't acknowledge how good they have it. So these girls started cussing me and calling me nasty names. For a second there, I thought I had a little discussion with them, but no. Once they lost the discussion, it was just F you, racist mofo. That's what they called me. Oh well, that was just one step. Of course, things got even more heated because all of a sudden, a bunch of Hispanic-looking guys, gangster wannabes, you know, the guys in the wife-beater shirts and tight pants, they showed up and started screaming at everybody. And yet again, they started picking on the weaker, older members of the rally. Now, these weren't the regular illegal alien type Hispanics, you know, the older ones that come here to America to work hard. They come here illegally, but most of them are not criminals. They're fairly respectful. They just want to work. They want to make a better life for themselves. No, these weren't these people. These were their kids. Now, the kids, the anchor babies of all these illegal aliens, especially out here in California, and I'm assuming it's the same thing in Texas and any other border state, they're the laziest bums you'll ever meet. Most of them are on welfare. Most of them look like little wannabe gangsters. Most of them don't finish high school. Most of them work periodically, but get a lot of government assistance. They're basic parasites on society. Now, they don't go to church. They don't follow the old Spanish tradition or Hispanic or Latin, whatever you want to call it. Again, I'm not for illegal immigration. I think it's a wrong thing, but I understand why they do it. And it's on us as a country to keep these people out. We don't need them here, especially in a labor market where people are not working. But again, they're not the main problem. It's their kids. It's their thug, wannabe, lazy, entitled kids that are the problem. And these were the kind of spoiled, low-life guys that came out of a bunch of cars and started screaming at all the rally-goers and threatening their lives. This was a major escalation. Before that, we just had the black girls screaming like idiots, cussing everybody out. We had a bunch of other kids calling people names. But this was a major escalation because they went to each person and they started saying, I know where you live. We'll find out where you live. I live in this town. We're going to find you and you're going to get it when the police is not here. And one of these thugs, one of these little punks, couldn't have been any more than 23, wife beater, tattoos, looks like a gangster, but you know he's not a gangster. He's one of those little mama's boys who gets money from the government and sits home and watches TV all day or does nothing, maybe deals some drugs on the side. So he started getting in my face and threatening me. I asked him, did you finish high school even that you're talking to me like that? Who the hell are you? Well, I didn't finish high school. I don't need to finish F in high school, he answered me. And he started getting very, very close to my face. And I started getting my guard up because you know what? It's one thing to argue with me, but it's another thing to get in my face, invade my personal space, and start threatening my life. I can handle a lot, but I'm not going to take any kind of risk to my personal safety or to the safety of the people who are with me. And trust me when I tell you that one way or another, I always have the means to protect myself. Man, I just looked at the clock and I'm having too much fun here with this show. The time is just running so quickly. I'm going to take a quick break, and as soon as we get back, I'll tell you the rest of the story. This is AJ Steele.
AJ Steele. Not right, not left, just right.
Welcome back to the AJ Steele Show. So I'm telling you the story of this Hispanic guy, this young Hispanic guy that looked like a little thug who got in my face and started threatening my life. Now I want to mention that this whole time when these people were just attacking every rally goer, every patriot, There were about 20 police officers there, and people asked him, please help out. These people are invading our space. They're threatening us. And the police told us, no, there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. I guess our tax money only goes to pay them to do COVID mask patrols or to give us tickets, because otherwise they're completely worthless. And how sad, isn't it? So anyway, this guy just keeps getting in my face closer and closer. He puffs his chest out and starts really threatening me. And I do the same because I'm not going to take crap from anybody. I didn't do anything wrong. I never hurt anybody in this world. And there's no reason whatsoever that I shouldn't have the right to be out there with an American flag. And all of a sudden, a police officer steps in right between us because he saw that this was escalating. And he said, you both have to separate. You both have to step back. Now, I didn't step up to this jerk. He stepped up to me. I didn't make any threats. He made threats at me, but no, you both have to step back. Apparently, there's a moral equivalency between the thugs and the law-abiding citizens of this country. So I step back because I follow the law. I'm a lawful person, and when a police officer tells me to do something, I do it. But as this other guy steps away also, the Latin guy, the little thug, he's yelling at me, don't worry, S.A., when the cops are not around, I'm going to find you, and you're going to get it. And I told him, go for it. But this is a sad thing. This little punk, this little nothing is making threats about my life, about my safety, right in front of the police. And did the police arrest him? Did they warn him? No, they just let him go. No big deal. And this little loser, this disrespectful little speck of nothingness just moved on and started threatening another rally goer. But anyway, I don't want to keep talking about this guy, so I moved aside. I kept waving my flag. People were screaming at us. Some were spitting. Not at me, luckily, because they would have gotten it. But that's what they were doing. And the police did nothing to protect anybody. And all of a sudden, another Spanish guy, I'm standing there with my flag waving at the freeway, comes and bumps into me. A big Spanish guy, a big Latin guy. And I told him, if you ever touch me again, I'm going to knock you out. And all of a sudden, the police wakes up and they come up to me and say, well, you can't threaten people. The guy just bumped into me. That meant nothing to them. When I try to protect myself, they jump on me. Again, that's the police. That's the good police that I support. That's the police that your and my taxes pay for. That's the police that we all trust and count on. They're completely worthless. Now, is it them individually? Absolutely not. It's the city mayor. It's the leadership of the county. It's the leadership of the state. They don't let the police officers do their jobs, and therefore the cops have become complete weaklings, absolute eunuchs in a blue uniform, which is a very sad thing to see because I come from a family of lawmen and police officers, and I believe that cops need to have the right and all the tools to do their jobs, and they cannot be constantly restrained. Now, getting back to the rally, as this thing progresses, there's more and more of the Antifa and BLM type crowd coming up, and all of a sudden, a big, nice white SUV pulls over right next to us. It's one of those really nice Cadillac Escalades. It's probably $80,000, $90,000. It's brand new. It's got those shiny wheels. Just a really nice Escalade. And who pops out of it? 4 little girls. The whitest girls you could ever find in the world. They're actually blonde, blue-eyed, very cute. Of course, they had a little bit too much makeup. Of course, they had a face full of hatred. Of course, the rap music, the gangster rap music that was blaring out of their car wasn't the greatest thing in the world. But what were they doing there? They looked like high school girls, maybe early college. I don't know. And guess what? They get out and start screaming at all the older participants of the rally. Older people that were there that could have been their grandparents or their parents, calling them the rudest things in the world, calling them the N-word, calling them racists, calling out their white privilege. Again, 4 little lily white girls calling the white privilege of other white people who could be their parents or grandparents. And these 4 girls came out of a Cadillac SUV that most people in America couldn't even dream to afford. So that's what it's come to. Get it? That's how brainwashed white kids in America have become, that they dare go to other white people and call out their white privilege. Who are these girls' parents? Who let them act like this? Who bought them this nice SUV and let them act like this? And you know what? Where I live, there's a lot of very wealthy white parents. A lot of them do drugs themselves. They advocate liberalism. They advocate disrespect to adults. They talk about white people as though they were crap, but they're white themselves. They're just full of self-hatred and virtue signaling. And realistically, they couldn't care less what their kids do because they want to do their drinking, they want to do their pot smoking, they want to do their partying, they want to live their lives, and they don't want their kids to bother them at all. So what do? They buy them a nice car, and they let them do whatever the heck they want to do as long as those kids stay out of their hair. But believe me, there's nothing for nothing in this world. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And today, these same kids that are yelling at adults that they don't even know, at strangers, are going to turn on their parents tomorrow. And they're not just going to yell at them. They're going to beat them. They're going to steal from them. They're going to sue them. They're going to hurt them. You reap what you sow. That's what's going on. But anyway, getting back to our story. So these kids, they see my son who's sitting there in a corner. He was kind of embarrassed. And I made a huge mistake by taking him there. He's 14 and he didn't want to be there. And he was sitting there with his hat pulled down over his eyes. And he had his mask. He was just keeping a very low profile. And I understand why. Because with social media and all these nasty people out there, it can be very dangerous and can be very, very embarrassing to be the one kid in the whole school who dares speak up for Trump or to be a patriot. Even though I'm sure there's plenty of other kids that feel the same way and parents that feel the other same way. It's not easy to be ostracized this way. And I think that there's a lot of other social and behavioral ramifications to this kind of stuff. I would say 99% of all the teachers here in the district where my kids go to school are uber lefties. They're not just, the regular Democrats, the kind of people that vote left wing. These guys are like Antifa supporters, the BLM supporters. And you know that they wouldn't hesitate for 1 minute to ostracize or hurt someone's grades and to single out my son or someone else's son for having political views that they disagree with. It's so easy to call someone a racist these days. It's so easy to call them names and to destroy their reputation and psyche. I mean, a lot of these teachers, they are the actual bullies. That's how they act. If these kids dare to disagree with their left-wing revisionist mantra, they will bully these kids into submission. And that's how it works. And for that reason, I wish I didn't take my son to this pro-Trump rally, even though he has every right to be there and I have every right to be there, and there's nothing wrong with believing what we believe. But anyway, getting back to this whole situation. So these 4 white girls, they tried to look at different people. They started screaming at the cops, calling them murderers, calling them racists. And when they didn't respond, one of those mean little girls, and again, I'm thinking they're about 18, 19, she noticed my son. And all 4 of them look at each other and they start marching towards him. Now, he was giving off the aura of someone who does not want to engage and is almost very uncomfortable in being there. And that made him an easy prey, an instant victim. So these girls just marched there and started going off on him, calling him a racist, calling him a pedophile, saying your dad is a pedophile. Why are you here? We're going to take photos of you. We're going to dox you. We're going to put you out there for everyone to see. We're going to make you go viral. And he's just sitting there not answering, not knowing what to do. He's much younger than them. He's under assault. And I just couldn't take it. Because you know what? No one messes with my kids. No one messes with my family or friends. So I jumped in there and I told him to leave him alone. Okay, that's not the exact words I used. I used some profanity. I'm sorry, but I don't like people messing with my family, especially my young son. He's a minor and they have no right to talk to him. And so one of the girls starts cussing me now. Again, these are 18, 19-year-old kids. I have kids that age in my home, okay? And I would never let them talk to me or to any adult that way. But she starts calling me, you are a white supremacist. You are a white supremacist. Now listen, my skin color is more brown than it is white, okay? I have a brown skin. I'm pretty dark, especially in the summer. I do not look like an average white guy. So I walked to this little blonde girl and I showed her my arm. I said, look at how brown my skin is and how white yours is. And you dare call me a white supremacist? And then she starts screaming to the cops, the same cops that she was calling murderers and pedophiles a second ago. Help me, he's attacking me, he's attacking me. And all the cops who did nothing for the last 25 minutes start gathering around. And I'm looking around me and I realize, wow, it's pretty much my son, myself, and maybe another 7 people who were there from the original rally. And all around us are these thugs, a bunch of young people, a bunch of black people, a bunch of Hispanic people, a bunch of white kids screaming at us, cussing at us. We couldn't even defend ourselves at this point. And then they start pulling out the spray paint cans and start spraying Black Lives Matter all over the street, all over the bridge, all over the overpass. And the cops just stood there and did nothing. At that point, I figured we've had enough. We've made our point. We stood our ground. We have to turn around and go home. There was nothing left to prove. And at this point, pretty much there were about 100 people from Antifa and Black Lives Matter just screaming and cussing and throwing things at the cops, spray painting things. And we started walking towards my car. And as we're walking there, my son noticed that those 4 little white girls were following him, trying to talk smack. And he did something I was very proud of. He turned around, he stood his ground, and he just gave him a piece of his mind. And they were in shock because they weren't expecting this to happen. And they all backed off. And I told him the lesson you have to learn from all this is don't ever look like a victim. You don't have to start fights. You don't have to look for trouble. And don't be a tough guy. But if trouble comes your way, stand your ground as long as you can. It's the American way. And so we drove home in silence, bowed but not defeated. Because some things in life are worth fighting for. And the next morning, I got about 100 emails and calls from people who said they saw my photo in a local paper. What are you going to do?
All I really want to be is a guy that gets a girl. All I really want to be. All I really want to be is a guy that gets a girl.
The AJ Steele Show, copyrighted 2020.